Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 219. This week I'm joined by Mike Pekovich and Anissa Kapsalis. We talk about a whole bunch of woodworking stuff. But first I want to let you know that coming up July 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern, Mike Korsak is going to be doing our next webinar titled Building Stronger Furniture. Mike has an incredible design background coupled with a timber framing background, and this webinar is going to be about designing from the get-go in a way where you're thinking about structure and making strong furniture that looks good as well. So check that out. Head on over to findwoodworking.com. I'll have a link in the show notes. I haven't said it in a while, but I need to say it right now. Thank you to all of the listeners out there who subscribe to the magazine or have an unlimited membership. It's because of you, the subscribers and the members, that we're able to do this podcast, that we're able to laugh and talk about woodworking and come into your homes and in your cars and in your shops and share our love of woodworking with you, our listeners. I realize that we haven't said thank you in a while. Thank you for making this happen, for making this go. One other thing that makes it go is advertisements, and here is a quick one from one of our sponsors, and then we'll get started with the show. Veritas Tools is the manufacturing arm of Lee Valley. Veritas president Robin Lee says that their aim is to ensure that the tool does not limit the expression of the person who's wielding it. To that end, Veritas takes traditional woodworking tools and makes them better in terms of ergonomics, functionality, or manufacturing materials. Veritas holds over 100 patents, which they see as proof of their innovative approach to getting more out of a tool. You can see what they've got to offer at leevalley.com.
Hold on just a sec. I'm on the podcast.
Oh, shit.
That's how everything has to start now.
All right. My apologies.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, man. Hey, guys.
Anissa, Jeff.
Hello.
Howdy.
How's everyone doing? We're on the podcast. Mike, what have you been building?
What's that?
You've been building something that it might be the first piece that we have like no lunchtime conversations around at all. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're doing this on the sly to me. Like I have no insider information, and it's disconcerting.
In terms of the piece of furniture I'm working on?
Yeah.
It's basically a version of the arched entry table that ran in the magazine a little while back. And it's for a client who liked it, obviously. But I like working with clients because when you're working with someone, even if they want like a piece that you've already made or they want you to design a piece, it's just that interaction kind of pulls me out of like the peer Mike aesthetic. And the house that this table is going in had these insanely beautiful curly redwood like wainscoting on the walls. I mean, like this really like curly redwood. It's like super nicely figured wood. So I didn't want to match that, but I wanted to get some wood with some figure to at least tie in with that. So instead of going with the white oak, which I normally make the table out of, I went with shedua, which is basically someone described it as a cross between teak and walnut. And it just can have this incredibly amazing figure to it. And it's one of those things where I knew going in, it's like I automatically thought of that wood. And when I thought of that wood, I was also thinking in terms of how using that wood is actually going to kind of change the design as well. So instead of really kind of square edge work, like the tabletop has like a curved under bevel to it, I went with ebony drawbore pins instead of, pins of the same wood. So just Just by changing the wood, I think it kind of changed the nature of the piece a little bit, and it looks super fancy too.
It's interesting to see, because very, very rarely do I see a polished finish on your pieces. And like it's highly reflective. It's it changes everything about the way that design looks.
Yeah. That was scary because it's like, where is this taking this? Like, this is like, it's almost a different aesthetic. Like, it's almost like, I'm not making comparisons here, but it's almost like more of a Tim Coleman aesthetic or a Hank Gilpin where, really nice design, still joinery heavy, but the figured wood they use, they just usually have like a higher sheen to their finishes and that depth and luster of the woods. It just, all of a sudden you look at every surface. Does it have a nice curve to it? Is it really refined? And so I'm kind of going for more kind of elemental arts and crafts feel to something that is a little bit more refined, I guess. So I think I found a happy medium with this piece, either that or I'm stuck between two aesthetics, and I don't know.
Is Shedua close poured?
No, it's kind of like walnut, where it has like the pores themselves are pretty open. Like you look at it, there isn't like a really strong grain pattern, but it does have kind of open pores. So I'd say like a walnut or a mahogany.
Did you do any pore filling or anything?
No, I didn't.
That's all.
And it's not actually, I mean, there's just an amazing luster to it. It's not like I'm finishing it to a higher sheen. It's still my basic finish, but it's just this finish on a highly figured wood just looks different than the same finish on white oak, which is
that's incredible.
Just doesn't have that luster. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I almost thought like, wow, Mike, French polished it or something.
No.
It yeah.
No.
Interesting.
No.
What about you, Anissa? Have you been working on anything?
Nope.
Sanity?
Nope. No, I haven't even moved on the treehouse. I'm just trying to get through every single day. Now the school's over, finally. Today's the last day.
Wow.
I don't have the pressure of making my kids. Yeah, we go late.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
You've been finished for a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I think 2.5, maybe 2.5 or 3.
Yeah. No, today's the last day. So now that I don't have to have the pressure of making sure my kids are doing their work, maybe I can actually just send them loose out into the neighborhood and do what I want.
Cool.
Yeah.
In the shop. But
good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, let's answer some questions. The questions this round have some great salutations, so I'm going to read them.
I noticed that.
One of them didn't, but all right. Let's see. This one is from Joe. Dear Ben.
I think you made them up.
No, I didn't. I swear to God. So like this one, I should have sent this to Liz to analyze because I'm not very good with commas, as we know. But Dear Ben, comma, Fine Woodworking Brain Trust. Is he calling me the Fine Woodworking Brain Trust, or is he excluding me from the Fine Woodworking Brain Trust?
I don't know.
If that's how you'd like to read it, Ben, I
think you're good. For the past 4 years, I have been doing hand tool only woodworking, and I don't own any machine tools. It really floats my boat, but thicknessing boards from, say, 3/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch isn't my idea of a fun Sunday. Lately, I've been just working with a local company and buying pre-milled stock S4S at the desired thicknesses. I've been thinking about getting a bandsaw for resawing purposes. I worry about dust in my lungs. What sort of specs should I look for in a dust collector if it is only going to be used for a bandsaw?
I mean, the sawdust from a bandsaw, the little particles, they're actually pretty big. So you're not getting like the super fine dust that you're getting even just like with sanding with 220 grit sandpaper.
Huh.
So, I mean, there's a health issue. Basically, if you're worried about dust and you have a bandsaw and you use it once every couple of weeks, get a good dust mask. I mean, that's how you keep your lungs nice and clear. I think you do want to try to pick up the dust from the bandsaw. I used to not do anything for years, but now I have a little bit bigger bandsaw. I use it more often. And if I don't collect the dust for it, like the internal lower cabinet just gets filled up. So you could use a regular shop vac for that. You don't really have to. I just wouldn't, if the bandsaw is the only power tool you have, wouldn't want to jump into getting a full-on cyclone ducted dust collector, or even just like the bag thing. I don't think it's necessary. I'd say if you have a shop vac, hook it up. If you don't, go buy a cheap shop vac.
How are you hooking the shop vac up to the bandsaw?
Just like shove the hose in the little thing.
Wrap it with duct tape.
Like if you have a shop vac with a 2-inch hose and you have a 4-inch port on your bandsaw, just get one of those step down adapter. Yeah. Sure, that's fine. I think that's at least going to get most of it.
Step down adapters are, I go to the woodworking supply and I buy a step down adapter and I come home and it's never the right adapter.
Do you ever get the one where the adapter is the exact diameter of the hose and it goes why
do they make that?
I don't know. Yeah.
It drives me nuts. Yeah. I have one around here. That was a little bit overkill of a reaction. I apologize, people. So I do the thing where Tom gave me like this little dust collector a couple of years ago, and it's tiny. And I declared, all right, this isn't going to be able to handle everything in my shop. It's not going to be able to handle. So I have a dust collector I dedicated to my bandsaw. The bandsaw is by far the most used machine in my shop. And, before I had any dust collection on it at all, I always thought, oh, you're not cutting that much of a kerf. You're not, it's not a table saw. It's not really throwing wood. And I noticed I'd go 2 or 3 weeks with only using my bandsaw and my shop was just covered in sawdust because it really does throw a lot more dust than I thought it did.
Yeah.
So I hooked up that little dust collector straight to the bandsaw and it was doing a little bit. I found that a shop vac just with a piece of pipe jammed right next to the blade, right under the bearings.
Yeah.
Collected more dust than a 4-inch dust collector hooked up to the 4-inch dust port on my bandsaw. So I would almost argue a shop vac is where I would start, because if you get a piece of PVC and find a way of finagling it so it is right next to the lower bearing guide, it grabs so much of that dust. The old Delta at 191 had a shop vac just plumbed right to that bearing, that lower bearing section. Did a great job.
So underneath the table.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's a good idea.
Do you have any dust collection at all, Anissa?
Well, yeah, I have a grizzly dust collector.
Okay.
But bandsaw wise, I'm going to chuck Barry under the bus again, as always. But
Barry broke my bandsaw.
The only time I have ever had dust collection hooked up to the bandsaw was when Barry came over and he hooked it up to the bandsaw, and within 5 minutes, my bandsaw was broken.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it was definitely the dust collection that broke it.
Right. Or maybe there was just so much dust packed down from years of not using dust collection that just happened to do that when Barry was there. But I like your idea of even putting a magnet on the PVC underneath.
Oh.
So you could just
Yeah.
So I had a wooden block that the magnet that I took an old hard drive magnet from, and whenever disassemble a hard drive, they've got some really powerful magnets in there. And
do our company laptops have good magnets?
Yeah, they're very old. So, but I screwed that to a block and then screwed a piece of PVC to that, and I was able to get it fairly close. What I recently did, though, because I'm fancy now and have a 3D printer, is I went on Thingiverse and somebody had a bandsaw dust collection thing, and you print it up, and it's got a slot for the blade to go into, and you glue magnets to it, and it just goes right up under that gullet, if you will. Wow. And that's what I've been doing now. I have it right now set up so I have a Y from the 4-inch port with that little dust collector. I have a Y to a 2.5 that goes to that area right next to the bearings under the table. But I swear it's still not collecting as good as when I just had a shop vac. I don't know if it's the velocity of a shop vac or what. So I need to experiment with that.
Can I just back this whole thing up? He wants the bandsaw and dust collection just so he can thickness boards, and he doesn't have to do it by hand, right?
Yeah.
So why doesn't he just get a benchtop planer?
Well, because then
that blows its own chips. He could put it away every 2 weeks, pull it out, and he can thickness to exactly what he wants. He doesn't have to buy a dust collector if he gets one that's blowing its own chips. What do you think of that?
That's an answer.
That's an answer.
I think he's eyeing down that slippery slope of, I have a bandsaw now. I might as well stop cutting this with my panel saw.
I agree. This is a symbolic buy. Just a bandsaw. That's all I'm going to get. That's all.
I just want a thickness boards, man. That's it.
Yeah. Planer's coming soon after. You better get a dust collector that handles your planer too.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes. Writing is on the wall, Joe. All right. Question number 2 is from Scott. In episode 214.5, the importance of taking notes during a build was touched upon several times. What method do you use for keeping records on each project? Thanks for many enjoyable hours of info, insights, and humor on your podcasts. So I had to look up what 214.5 was, and that was the one where it was just Barry and Nisa and I just like, well, I think you should. We didn't answer any questions. And I have a hard time believing one of us said that we actually do keep notes.
I almost went back and listened to it, but I don't remember talking about that.
I remember lamenting that I don't keep notes. And I do now.
You do?
I do. But like my woodworking is very specific these days. And okay, first off, recommendation. Buy a ream of cardstock. Heavy paper.
Okay.
And use that for it's when the Blackwing pencil starts doing it for you and you're going, you know what? Yeah, a good pencil is just better. It's worth its added cost. I use 10 pieces of paper a year in my shop. I can buy the good stuff. And it holds up. It's not flopping around. It's just nicer all around. My wife bought this for fabric tags that she prints for her fabric. But I just grabbed a stack of 20 and it's made all the difference in the world. So that's what I use for notes.
Did you ever find yourself when you had like the really good paper, if like you ask yourself what you're going to write down, is it worthy of a piece of cardstock?
Yeah.
Or will you just pick up a scrap of wood if you just need to make a quick addition, thing?
So there is a hierarchy, right?
Okay.
I have cardstock for certain things. I have the Veritas grid pad for certain things. Okay. And then the day-to-day notes are either done on the little pad that stays in the pocket or the CT Valley pad.
I'm pretty sure there's not a push stick in my shop that doesn't have something
Right.
scribbled on it, dimensions scribbled on it.
That's awesome.
I got
I've
a lot
never
of
thought
push
about
sticks too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never thought about writing on push sticks.
Yeah.
Okay, so notes though, Mike, do you keep notes?
For a long time I didn't. I mean, part of that kind of that, problem solving aspect of woodworking, I really like that. And in all the solutions, they tend to get assigned to short-term memory. It's not an age thing. It's just has always been that way, to where I can make a piece, have some like really, what I would think of like really cool solutions, like, oh, wow, let me do it that way. Hey, that worked. And then I can look at the piece 2 months later and would have no idea how I went about doing that. And then I found out, like, if I'm making it again, it's like, I don't know what I did. I'm just going to figure it out again. And by the time I do it, I realize, oh, yeah, that's how I did it last time, too. So I didn't bother taking notes. But when I started teaching and actually in writing articles and stuff, yeah, it was kind of important to start to record things. So I would have my sketchbook out and I would like draw these little ink drawings and the little detail drawings with arrows and little art type and all this stuff. And then I realized that just your cell phone is fine. Just snap a picture. If anything, it's a lot faster and I take a lot more photos. So I try to, at the very least, I'll pull my phone out and be popping pictures. But then, that sort of, with Instagram, then that's, it means I've got a camera set up in my shop. It means that I've got my tripod out if I need it. It means that I'm in the habit and in the rhythm of taking pictures and not having that really affect the flow of what I'm doing. So I would probably say, yeah, it's probably more photographic now. But, if I have special jigs or setups, or I have a really funky jig that I won't know what I did with it later, I'll do little drawings for that kind of stuff as well.
I think you don't keep the jig, or you do keep
I
the jig,
do,
or you don't?
but I'll have this jig and it's super smart, and then I'll look at it 6 months later. It's like, what is this?
I think that's the conversation that we had, Ben, that he might be talking about. About how even when we're on shoots, people are figuring out what they did all over again. Mm-hmm. And how it goes, even if they prep the stuff a few weeks or a month before, when it comes time to do it on the shoot, they're having that moment. They're like, what did I do? And then they have to figure it out again. So I think that's kind of what we talked about.
Yeah, there is a stick on my side feed table of my table saw, a piece of cherry, and written on it, it says bandsaw tenon spacer. Like, that's it. I don't know what that came from, but I cannot throw that away, because one day I'm going to pull out something and look and say, that's what that was for. So,
yeah. There's just I've been helping my brother side his house, and I wound up with just these New England houses, just roof off of a roof with this angle, that angle, and I wound up with I had a little piece of plywood that I was using as like a track saw table, and I wound up with like 12 different bevel gauges angles transferred to the edge of that table. And at the end of the last day, my brother goes, oh, we need this piece. And I was like, okay, that's front roof, back roof, and I couldn't remember what any of those angles were, even with my notes. It was just, and then there was a piece of wood we found that just said keep. It didn't say why. It just said keep. It was like 2 weeks ago. That made sense, but I don't know what that's meant for now. I've been keeping like really, really elaborate notes that are probably overkill. But part of what I'm doing is like when you build an instrument, so much of what you do gets covered up.
All right.
And so I've been trying to keep tabs of the thickness of the linings that I did and what the wood was made out of. And because I don't know what matters yet. I don't know what is going to all of a sudden say, oh, this is starting to make a difference. So I've been keeping tabs of everything. And the other problem is that quarter sawn softwood looks like quarter sawn softwood to me. It's Engelmann spruce or Adirondack spruce or yellow. It's all looks the same to me at this point. So all of a sudden I go back and look at my order forms from these lumber suppliers and go, oh, that was Adirondack spruce. That wasn't Engelmann spruce. And is that going to make a difference? I don't know. So I've been keeping really, really elaborate notes.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah.
Well, like I was milling up lining material and, you know, you're getting the information from multiple different sources. I go back through the books and go, wait, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. And I was, how thick do I mill this to? And thank God I opened up my steam box one day and there was still a piece of unbent lining left in there because I seamed up an extra. And it was like, pull it out, measure. Okay, it was 60 thousandths. That's what I'm going with now, you know? So
cool.
Anissa, are you a note taker? I know Krenov students all have a stack of notes from the school.
I have a stack of notes from them also. It's hard. You have to be disciplined to stop yourself in your shop outside of that school environment and start taking notes. I keep little scraps from each project if I want to, like I'll deliberately keep them, or a story stick, something like that. I don't take a lot of notes. I scribble things down to remember them 2 or 3 minutes later, like a measurement that I need, and I'll just write that anywhere. I think it would be a good idea to have like a shop binder where I get into the habit of writing down, just even if it's a bullet point list of my operations. I kind of like that idea. I might do it and fill it with cardstock.
Yeah. Cardstock, like it just holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like the idea of having a binder now.
Yep.
Because like right now I have just random pieces of paper and they go in a drawer or they're with whatever uke I'm working on. But I like that idea of a binder. See?
I don't like binders because they're triangular and they don't.
We just came up with a system.
You don't like binders?
No, because like it's a triangle, so it's the top is at an angle, and you still try to stack stuff on it, and things eventually slide over.
That's a you problem, man.
That's why I like the spiral bound sketch pads, and you can get those with like super heavy stock, like basically bordering on cardstock there.
But the flexibility that you get from a binder, you could take things out, put them back in, change the order. You can't do that with a spiral notebook.
Yeah, that's really smart. then you just stack them vertically like books, right? So then you're okay. Okay. It doesn't have to be the big, massive 3-wing. It can be like the tiny 3-wing binder.
Yeah. 1-inch binder.
Yeah. And you can write a little sticker on the spine. You can see this is the... All right. I like this. Okay.
This is the new fine woodworking method.
Yeah.
He didn't just say that's an idea. Like, this is a first. I'm really excited.
Yeah. No, this is cool. This is really cool because actually Bob Van Dyke, when he teaches a class, he'll pull out a binder, like you said, and it'll list, it'll have the cut list in it. It'll have photos of all the machine setups and, never mind. I'm going binder. That's really good.
Another thing that I like about the binder mentality is I try and do things on the computer or on the iPad so that I can easily change them. Because if it's in a pad, like a fancy sketch pad or something like that, I feel like it's permanent and I don't want to do it until it's done. With a binder, if I need to, like I have a thing of order of operations for building something. If I need to redo that, I can just redo it and then stick that in the binder. Mm-hmm. Binders are where it's at.
I like that.
Jeff, what did you you had about?
What about Chris Becksford's card catalog?
Well, that's filled with screws, isn't it? Does he have?
Yeah, no, he's got every project he's ever done.
Yes, with a little note card.
Yeah.
I would drop that, and all the cards would fall out.
See, when you've done 812 tables, then a card catalog makes sense. I've done 2. Yeah.
No,
We have that in a video. Is that at the end of his shop tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Anissa, Chris keeps all of his little templates and all that kind of stuff. Are those like
he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
just like big manila folders or something like that?
They're hanging on the wall with string tied around them.
Oh, okay.
And he comes and he unties all the little knots and then
Both. He's very meticulous about everything. But he does have all the patterns in manila folders and they're labeled. And then he has his card catalog and then he has all the jigs and stuff like that hanging on the wall. It's all labeled,
Cool.
Which is smart and efficient because then you know exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Binders and cardstock.
Yeah, I'm super excited. The next class I teach, don't tell anybody because I'm not sure it's actually going to happen. But I like the idea of like giving every student their little binder for the class. And it has like the plans in it, blank paper for notes, and cut lists if they want to make it. I like this. This is great. And like I'll put like a little cover on it that shows a piece of furniture.
So Jeff Lefkowitz, when you take a Boggs chair class, Jeff Lefkowitz and David Diard, like Jeff has the manual done up and it's like, maybe 50 pages of whatever. And and there's even a little spot for taking notes and
Wow. I'm not going to do that.
Slick.
That's depressing.
I'll post a picture of it.
Okay.
Pretty awesome. All right. It's time for our segment. And Anissa came up with her grand idea. Shop Talk Live segment, potluck.
Potpourri.
I don't know if this was out of wanting it to be great or us just being lazy and not wanting to decide and discuss what we were going to do. So we'll see.
Yeah, we can decide afterward, right?
Okay. Was this a great idea or was this a lazy idea? Who wants to go first? I think Anissa should go last because she wants to do smooth move again, probably.
No, she has to go first because.
Oh, okay, because it was her idea.
I need a little time.
Okay. All right. It is a smooth move. So I got when Fine Woodworking, when we were closing down the shop and I wasn't there when everybody went to clean out the whole shop together. So
that sounds like a lot of work. I can't be there that day.
No, I was on a shoot. I'm pretty sure I was on a shoot. But beforehand, I remember I went and I packed up all the hand tools, super nice and neat, and boxed them up and brought them back to the office. But after that group cleanup, I went down to the shop and the saw stop was gone and everything was almost gone except, a couple like fixtures here and there. And I grabbed a big stack of veneers that I found in the dumpster. I jumped in the dumpster and pulled out the veneers. But didn't you almost want to take them? Was it you or Barry?
I don't remember them.
They're really pretty.
There was a lot of stuff going on there.
And I also took an over the fence tenoning jig that was for the saw stop there. And I thought, well, the saw stop's gone. I'm going to grab this. And I have a saw stop with a fence. It should fit on my fence perfectly. And so I brought it home and it didn't fit. It was just a hair different than the fence on my saw stop. And so I was a little annoyed at first. And then I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I thought, well, it was a little bit too tight. So I couldn't get it over the fence. And I thought, well, I could just set up the fence so that it's just taking a skim cut off the inside of one of those of the U. Wait, why are you making that face bend?
I think I see what's coming.
What's coming? It was a good idea. Go ahead.
You set off your saw stop because there was a screw in there.
Oh, no. I checked for that.
Okay. All right.
So I wanted to just creep up on because you don't want any wobble on that fence as you're sliding it back and forth. And so I just set it up just to take a skim off the farther side. I don't know why I chose that side, but it's safe. You're riding against the fence. This thing is totally flat. Just the tiny, and I had the blade up raised only like a little bit to test it out. And I took that first cut with the blade just a little bit up, and it worked. Totally safe. And I raised the blade all the way up just so that it wouldn't cut into the top of the U. And I made the cut, no problem. It just wasn't enough. So I still couldn't fit this tenoning jig over the fence. So what do you do when you want to take a little more off? You bump the fence toward the blade. And so I just a hair, I just tapped it a tiny bit, and I did another pass, and it still wouldn't fit. And I bumped it a tiny bit more. You understand what I was doing, right, Ben?
You're tuning the wrong guitar string. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I was there for like 20 minutes. And finally, I turned off the dust collection, and I turned everything off. I took my ear protection off so I could think about what is going on here. This would be so loose by now. I was bumping the fence in the wrong direction.
And just sawing air.
Yes. And it took me 20 minutes of sawing air to figure out that I was bumping the fence in the wrong direction. And that thing fits perfectly now.
Yeah. That's what I've sat there and like tweaked an EQ on a track for days or for 10 minutes. I thought, a little bit more, and look up, so you're wrong track. It was, it's, or you're tuning a guitar string, and all of a sudden you're tuning it. Come on, why is this not bang, and you break the guitar string? So Mike knows.
Yes. And like when you were doing the EQ changes, I bet you could hear the difference, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, everybody in the room's like, no, I don't like it as much. And all of a sudden you realize, we weren't doing anything, guys.
What do you got, Ben?
So I decided to go with a tool bomb, because I've had a tool bomb sitting and waiting, and nobody ever wants to do a tool bomb. And I'm sorry, I'm going to offend an entire continent, because it seems like Europeans love their folding rulers, but what? Well, come on. What a useless tool a folding ruler is. It's got one good, if you're a chair maker and you need to measure inside dimensions or whatever all the time. I have 2 Lufkin folding rulers around, and they're wonderful tools, but I never use them. And anytime I see somebody pull out a folding ruler, it's like, oh, you just like unfolding it.
It is nice to unfold them and fold them.
They're fun, yeah.
Yeah, there's satisfaction in it.
I don't have that much time. Do either of you use a folding ruler?
No, I have.
And they're silly, aren't they?
I have maybe a couple.
Yeah.
And yeah, you think, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I don't use them.
I get it, but no.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the first time someone who grew up using a folding rule tried to tape measure, they threw away their folding rule.
Yes. Accept progress in some areas. Like I prefer to whatever. I'm a old school folding. Come on, no.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Man, hate mail is coming.
You think so?
I do.
I'm pretty sure David Welter uses a folding ruler. Don't some of them have that little tip that comes out at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Supposedly you have to have that in order for it to be useful, I guess.
I have that. I don't know. I used it when I made that box chair in that class, and it was really cool. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, so I still have one. It's sitting there next to my other 28 tape measures, but.
Seems like a lot of people use them for inside, for squaring up a case.
Okay.
I'm going to go through my outs and see what he used it for. I remember thinking, oh, that's a great thing to have. And now I can't remember what it was for, but I'm going to look and I'll let you know, Ben.
I almost have it now out of spite. just because one day I'll grab it. I'll be like, oh, okay. That's why I had it. But yeah. What you got, Mike?
Technique. So this has to do with that piece of furniture that I was making. So it was kind of tough trying to come up with drawer pulls to kind of fit the style. I had kind of a rough idea of what I wanted in my head, which was different than what I would normally use. So I ended up buying some kind of Tansu style bail pulls from Haida Tool. Really great place for Japanese chisels and Tansu hardware and stuff there in San Francisco. And they're the kind of handles where they have those kind of the long split pins that go through, and you're supposed to crimp them over and hammer them into the back of the drawer. And this is like again, we're talking, kind of verging on a high style piece of furniture. I ain't banging no crimped little pokey things into the back of the drawer front. So I took a cue from an article, I think, did you work on that, Anissa? The hardware maker in Fort Bragg? What's his name?
Sanderson.
Bob Sanderson.
Yeah.
He did an awesome article on making your own pulls, and he was using just like a regular Cotter pin as a post. Right. And rather than keeping them really long, he basically cut them off just a little longer than the thickness of the drawer front. And so you could kind of nice polish and round over the ends. And then he used a wedge, pounded in between the Cotter pin, split to kind of wedge it open to create sort of a dovetail effect to hold that thing in place.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forgot all about that.
So that's what I did with these, is that, traditionally you're not, you leave them long and bend them, but I cut them short and filed them over and got a little wedge and wedged it from the inside, and it worked really, really well. Plenty strong enough for the drawers. Definitely much, much cleaner look. I'm sure you're going to have, if you actually do bend and hammer those in, I think like if you're doing chest handles or something, I think that's going to be stronger. But overall, I thought it worked out really well. So I pulled out that article, I read it, then I got super excited about making my own hardware, and I had to back up a little bit and just sawed everything off. So
it was on Facebook Marketplace looking for forges.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, well, speaking of making your own hardware, Andrew Hunter had a video on making hinges out of cotter pins, where he does the whole bend it around and he's a guy who like, I got to go buy a forge now to make my own hardware because nobody makes this. And it's like, okay. Yes. But yeah, so I'll post a link to both those.
Cool.
That's cool. All right.
That was good, right? As a potluck.
That was good. Yes, I like that.
Yeah, we'll let the audience decide. You know, like there's no theme, but we all got to say what we wanted to say.
That's true. Maybe it's just self-serving.
That's a slippery slope, letting the audience decide anything.
Well, they decide everything eventually. If they stop listening and we can't make the podcast anymore.
I don't know. I think I would rather have 3 different answers that are good answers than 3 answers to the same thing. And it's only because one really good one because they really wanted to do it, and the other 2 people just had to think of something.
That happens from time to time.
Yeah.
That's when I pull out like, I like having a random plane blade lying around.
Yeah. That could
and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's great, Ben. All right, let's take a break.
All right.
Regardless of your skill level in woodworking or home repair, you want a glue that you can trust. Because a glue that doesn't work can ruin any project in a hurry. Fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp times, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com. TITEBOND.com. All right, question number 3 is from Lucas, I believe. Hello, everyone, especially Ben. I've got this question for the podcast. This one's kind of been sitting around for a little while because I knew something was coming. I'm designing a wall shelf with horizontals and verticals overlapping on all sides, similar to a shelf I found on Chris Becksford's website. Do you happen to know how he does this joint exactly? I can't make it out from the photo. Obviously, it's some sort of lap joint, but since it's so deep, I think there's needs for support on the loose sides of the boards so that they don't bow. Is he also running a shallow groove on the to house the loose sides? I have a table saw, no dado blade though, illegal in Europe.
Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah.
I did know that. Because I work at a woodworking magazine. That's our job. And a router table, plus a planer, drill press, and hand tools. I'm a beginnerish woodworker, but I've done a few projects already, and I think I can pull this off. I think you can too, Lucas. So, how would one find out how that is done? Anissa Capsalis.
Well, it just so happens that we shipped an issue to the printer yesterday that has this that wall shelf that was his inspiration as one of our articles. And Mike took this amazing, ridiculously beautiful photograph of the finished shelf that when I got the PDF, I was just like, whoa. Have you seen it, Ben? You must have.
I have. Obviously, I didn't go, whoa. Sorry, Mike.
Wow. Okay.
Are those cherry blossoms? They're cherry blossoms on top, right?
I was afraid that the little blossom, the flowers might have been over the top a little bit.
No.
So thank you for saying that, because I was a little, and plus like it was on my dining room table. And of course I had pants on when I shot it, but it was under really kind of not ideal circumstances to get a finished shot. So I was kind of glad that at least, lighting wise and everything, that it turned out okay. So thanks. But it's a beautiful show.
How did you do that on your dining room table? That's really wow.
I set it down and then I just had Bill clone out all the shadows from actually sitting on the table.
Bill really did a number for you. That's great.
I have a Bill. Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, tell the audience who Bill is.
Bill Godfrey is our Photoshop technician extraordinaire who has like a fine art training. He's actually a wonderful painter, and he just uses all of his skills along with his Photoshop magic. And this poor guy, because he works for all the magazines, so we're actually the best. Sometimes we just ask him to kind of, fix fingernail fungus and that kind of stuff, or fix joinery and all that kind of stuff. But, for gardening, he's had to add leaves to a bush. For fine home building, he's had to add hard hats or hearing protection to every single person in like a photo of the whole, site crew. Anyway, he's great. So yeah, Bill is he can take a good photo, make it look amazing. He can take a really bad photo and make it look great. And so, and I work with Bill and I proof all the photos in an issue before it goes out. And if there's like a photo that's like a little sketchy in terms of color correction, I'll know. I said, Bill, you had to do a lot of work on this, didn't you? And he would just like nod. I said, yeah. So
it's just like, it's already as good as it's going to get.
Exactly. Yeah. So if something isn't perfect, it's because it came a long way to get where it was. And it's the way we can have, a bunch of editors going out under really stressful and non-ideal, situations and shooting and still having a magazine that looks really good. So, yeah. But actually everybody on the staff now, Nisa included, are fantastic photographers. So, actually,
all three of us.
What's that? All three of you. Yeah. We finally winnowed out all of the little. No, it's not true.
And he's such a good guy too. Like
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
So did you mention how to make this shelf?
Oh, right.
No,
so
we just keep talking about the photos.
Sorry.
Sorry, Lucas, we're out of time.
Yeah.
So Lucas, he modified the design, and it's really cool what he did.
Yeah, he sent us some drawings about how he was going to do it.
Yeah. So, and he's right. The joinery it's lap joints with a shallow dado, and he does secure those the loose part of the shelf. He on one section of Chris Becksford's he screws in from the back, and on the other section he uses the hanging joinery to kind of tie everything together a little bit, which is a really cool idea. And
so how would you do that without a dado blade? Because that's what Chris used.
Oh, right. I'm blown away. I did not. Perhaps I should have already known that dado blades are illegal in Europe, but I didn't. You could do it by hand for sure. You can just keep bumping the fence over in the right direction until you get until you get to the desired thickness, I guess. How would you do it without a dado blade, Mike?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the stop slots for the half lap, I think you can still do that on the table saw with a pair of cuts and then just knock out the waste. Yeah. Maybe for that shallow dado, if I didn't have a dado, I guess, yeah, I mean, a router, that's not a bad thing. It's also something where you could just scribe it, saw it with a hand saw and get out your little router plane and just knock that out pretty quickly. I would never do that, but you could do that. One could. No, I mean, I think that would be, if you were at all invested in hand tools, it'd be really fun. This is a good joint. I think you can handle by hand really well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess a router is super smart. So you have like that little T fence where it captures the router in between like two cross pieces. And then you can chuck in your 3/4 bit for the dado, then stick in your 5/8 inch bit for the half lap, go all the way through. Probably a router, you can do it super fast, keep everything perfectly aligned.
So you could do with a router, you could do the shallow dado,
definitely
the whole width of the shelf, and then you could take a bearing guided pattern bit and clear out the rest, guided off of the top of that shallow dado.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So do the shallow dado, go to the drill press or something, hog away most of the material where the board needs to pass through for the half lap.
Right.
And then just reference off the top of that dado with a flush trim bit.
Just to get rid of the waste in the middle.
Yeah.
That's super smart. I like that.
Yeah. The other thing is I've got one of those Bridge City kerf makers. Do you know about these?
I think so.
It's a little doohickey that you measure basically you with a method you wind up measuring the exact kerf of your table saw blade or whatever blade, and then this little block becomes the spacer block for a stop block, be it on a sled or miter saw or miter fence or whatever. And I got it just because I saw it and I put it on a Amazon wish list. And then 3 years later, all of a sudden for Christmas, my parents got it for me. I was like, oh, this is great. And it went in a drawer and I never used it. But it was always like, one day I'm going to, and I wound up doing some half laps with it. And it is one of those, this is a magical tool that it allows you to do perfect half lap, bridle joints, whatever. Easily dialed in. And I do know that there's some YouTube videos, 3x3 Custom, Tamar, she made her own version I'll post some links in the show notes. So if you want to do it with a table saw blade, that would be a good way, is with a kerf maker type block thing. But I think I'd do the router thing. Or yeah. Cool. There's a bunch of ways.
Yeah.
I hate to keep harping on this one thing. Why are dado blades illegal in Europe?
Because from my understanding of it is when things go south, they really go south with a dado blade.
Huh.
There's a lot of EU regulations that seem over the top to us, but I think there's no fixing something that's been damaged by a dado blade hand or something. And maybe it's got to do with healthcare, and we're going to leave this one alone.
Okay. You can edit out.
Well, no. I think it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that. So that when I'm using a dado blade, I think in the back of my mind, I better be careful because this could be dangerous. But it doesn't feel like an overly dangerous thing to be doing.
Well, you're rarely doing a through cut with a dado blade. So that is, I don't want to say there's no kickback, possible.
I do a lot of through cuts. Almost everything I do with the dado blade is a through cut. I think the stop cuts with the dado blade, that's the freaky thing. But like for tenons, you can do tenons with a dado blade. You do rabbets. If I am doing dados like across a board, I'll typically have that in a crosscut sled. So I think that's.
But you're not ripping.
Well, like a rabbet, is sort of, or if you're doing a panel groove for door frames or something like that, and you have a little skinny dado blade.
But there's no chance with a panel groove. There's no chance of the cut closing up behind the blade.
I don't know. I don't know if it's the closing up of the cut. It's probably if you're having the end of a board against a rip fence as you're cutting a dado.
Yeah.
And if that were to come away from the fence.
Yeah.
And flip around, you're right. I mean, it's bad enough to have your thumb go across a regular table saw blade. But yeah, if that went across a dado blade, like you said, you're removing a lot of stock there. So that could be, there might not be anything left to stick back on.
Did you just replace the word flesh with stock?
Well, I just.
Yes, he did.
So I don't know. And also, I guess theoretically you can get a dado blade the same diameter as a regular 10-inch blade. Usually you find them here. They're either 8-inch or 6-inch diameter. And which means if you put a 8-inch diameter dado blade on your saw stop, you can't use the riving knife anymore because that's set up for a different diameter. So that could introduce different safety issues because I know on European saws, they all have the riving knives that move up and down with a blade. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, they seem to deal with it fine, and maybe that's why track saws and track guided routers are much more common there than here.
Yeah. So. Like a circ saw with a dado blade.
Oh. They timber framers. Yeah. What is it? It's Shelter Institute up in Bath, Maine.
Yeah.
Which is just if anyone's ever up there, is it Bath or is it Woolworth? Woolwich, whatever.
I think it's still in Bath.
If anyone's up in that Mid-Coast Maine, Bath, Brunswick area, you need to stop by Shelter Institute. It's an insane woodworking store, but they also do timber framing classes and all that stuff. And follow them on Instagram because they have some crazy tools that would not be allowed in the European Union. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's go to question number 4 with the greatest salutation yet. And I am going to read all questions with the salutation from now on. Help me, O Ben Strano. STL is my only hope. Oh, we've peaked. Shop Talk Live listeners, we've peaked. I recently encountered a glue line failure on a desktop. I'm trying to understand the cause and repair the piece. It may be a question that only the late R. Bruce Hoadley could answer. The desktop is 40 by 20 from a single 4-quarter hard maple board. Desk was completed in 2017. Didn't present the problem until a couple of months ago when a gap as large as 55 thousandths of an inch opened up over 18 inches of the glue line. The glue up went very well at the time. Very well, right? There was plenty of squeeze out top and bottom, and the result was a gap-free and straight top. The ends of the joint are very much intact. No signs of separation. About a year ago, my daughter acquired a gaming laptop, which has been used on the desktop since. It looks like the narrow side has shrunk where the gap is, and the wider side has not. The computer can run very hot, leaving me to wonder if that somehow affected the glue. Could I have starved the joint by overclamping? What am I missing? How do I repair this? Should I rip along the glue lines, rejoint and glue, or will I have to do this again in 3 years? So, what do we think happened?
I think the heat was probably the culprit. The heat didn't do anything to the glue necessarily. What the heat did is it just caused that wood in that area to shrink and pull away from each other. And maple, it's like if wood is going to move, it's going to move. You cannot hold that. So I think it's probably that. Just rip it, re-glue it, and stick the computer on something, a little trivet or something on top of, just to keep the direct heat off of the table. I think you diagnosed your own problem pretty well.
I was wondering if there was like a grain issue there or something, but it looks like two, wide boards, like you said, glued up, and it's the rift or quarter sawn area here in this, when I look at the photos, it's there's no outrageous grain. There's no.
Mm-mm.
No, I mean, if the heat were dispersed over the entire tabletop, I think it would just shrink and expand as a whole. But just because you have this area which is centered length to length and also end to end, across the width as well, so that you're heating up just a localized area. So everything there, the wood is just shrinking only right there. And I think that's why you're popping that joint. Maple's tough. And you were using the aluminum bar clamps, which are pretty light duty. You had 5 clamps on there, 3 on the bottom, 2 on the top, which is pretty good. So,
you don't think he could possibly have over clamped?
No,
and you're right.
With definitely not over clamped.
Yeah.
No, let's just say it was I'm going to say it's that heat, a lot of heat in a really localized area. And you could put the gaming laptop on something or throw the gaming laptop away. Seriously.
I was listening for Eli to like viscerally react in the background.
There are other issues that just throwing the laptop away would solve, not necessarily related to woodworking, but good luck with that.
So,
Anissa, how would you go about fixing this?
I would just rip it and reglue it as well. It looks, when you see the photos that he sent right after glue up, it looks great. It looks, I agree with Mike. I think it was the heat. It looks as if it hadn't been glued up and there was just an exaggerated, maybe he sprung the joint a little bit.
So maybe there was already a slight spring joint to begin with.
So maybe that just got enhanced by the heat from the computer.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, it just looks as though it's 2 boards that were put together and they hadn't gotten clamped yet. And it was a little bit, maybe too much of a spring joint. So, but I would just skim off and cut it again and then just reglue it.
Would you do that initial cut with like a circular saw and a guide rail or something, would you be weary of putting this over a table saw given the reaction or the tension that might be built into it?
No, just shove it on the table saw.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because you're really splitting it down the glue line. So you're only taking a 1/16 of an inch off of each board. So that's not enough to release any tensions to get it to warp or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Okay.
And then that's going to give you, actually, just if you just rip down, it's actually going to give you a pretty darn straight glue line. If you have a table saw blade, you may just glue up from there.
I remember one time doing a desk and the panel glue or the tabletop glue up didn't go well. And I think at lunch you were just like, just saw it apart and do it again. And I was like, what? You can just do that? You don't have to live with this mistake? Just saw it apart and glue it up again. I was like, oh. Yeah. All right.
There you go.
Well. All right. So let's see. We've got a listener comment from Varick. More to life than wood talk. Working my way backwards through the catalog of podcasts, I had to laugh when Ben made a joke about Shop Talk Live being what people were stuck with when Wood Talk announced that they were calling it quits. And that's exactly how I came to find this podcast. While I was happy when Wood Talk came back from their hiatus, it was the best thing because Shop Talk Live has become my favorite podcast. Suck on that, Mark. The typical mix of Mike, Ben, and Anissa have a great chemistry, and the less frequent hosts are an equal pleasure to listen to along with the many guest woodworkers. My favorite segment is Smooth Move. It is my bi-weekly affirmation that I am not the only one making dumb mistakes in my shop. Keep up the good work. Thank you for that, Varick. I have a recommendation, a random recommendation. Mario Messina on Instagram. Did you guys know it's Messina Designer Craftsman? He's a I believe he's an artist in residence at Vermont Woodworking School. And he is doing he's like taking driftwood and then making sculptural elements around the driftwood and then lining them with like the fancy paper you buy, Mike, and then making lamps out of them. And they are unbelievably beautiful. Just absolutely insane sculptural lamps that look like moth wings and just organic, and oh man, it gets me jazzed.
Who is this again?
Mario Messina. Yeah, he's an artist in residence at Vermont Woodworking School.
Yeah. I know his stuff. Some people in Seattle were doing this, and so you make these wooden frames, and then you get this paper that you put on wet in pieces over it, and then it shrinks tight. That's amazing. Yeah, I saw that. It's just like, I want to go there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily want to go there. I just want people to go there, and I want to have enough money to just surround myself in it.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. Anissa?
Well, I'm doing what Mike did. Yeah, there's another guy, Cameron Mathiasen. He's Lightness 555. He's doing a lot of sculptural lighting stuff like that with driftwood as well, and with the paper. It would be interesting to compare the work that they're doing. It probably sounds like they're both pretty beautiful.
It's like the same vein, but in that two people speaking the same language, but they're going in different directions with it. When I look at it, this is incredible as well. Yeah. Wow.
So one of the things that I wanted to recommend is a YouTube channel that my kids turned me on to. It's will appeal to anybody who's into building. Mr. Tifu. It's this guy that's he's using sticks or just one shovel, and he's building these massive structures. He's digging them into the dirt. He's using some wood and sticks, and he's making these these houses. I think he's in South America, just making like big swimming pools by hand. And he's running down to the river and filling these giant swimming pools up with buckets, one bucket at a time. And it's really cool. Mr. Tifu.
All right. You'll have to send a link to it because I'm not going to be able to spell it. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mike, anything random?
Yeah. Upcycled skate art. This guy does super, super cool things where he just gets like old skateboards and like presses them together and then makes cool stuff out of this really beautifully laminated work. Also, the reason I mentioned that is he's putting together like a really cool charity raffle where he got 2 full sets of chisels, 2 Cherries chisels, and he's sending those out to different makers. I'm actually fortunate enough to be one of them, and we're all putting different handles on the chisels, and then he's going to raffle off these sets of chisels with a different handle by a different maker on each one.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wait, so you raffle off, so like you're going to get handles from...
You're going to get a set of chisels with like 6, 7 different handles by different makers on each chisel.
That's
Take my
cool.
money.
Yeah. So that is, so like it's the hashtag is, I think it's Chisels for Change.
Such a good hashtag.
Yeah. Really, really good program. Unfortunately, I wish I could tell you all the other guys doing cool stuff, but it's everybody doing really, really wild things. So I would definitely check that out.
That's awesome. Doing it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jeff, any random recommendations?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, as I get back to the script, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunt.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thank you for listening. Quick reminder before we totally sign off, head on over to findwoodworking.com and sign up for Mike Korsak's webinar, episode number 4 of our webinar series. We've been having a lot of fun with them. I think you dig them.
I want to say something that might be inappropriate before we get started.
Why do they make that?